Welcome to the Black Mirror Podcast.
Join host Ho-Ho as he discusses the riveting Netflix original series,
Black Mirror. Now, here he is, Ho-Ho-Ho.
Broadcasting from the Cottage Studio, welcome to Black Mirror Podcast. And as always, I'm your host, Ho-Ho. So how y'all's doing? I hope you're doing good. I really do. Today we're going to be talking about Episode 3 of Season 6, titled Beyond the Sea. Now, you may have recognized some of the cast members in this episode, like Aaron Paul, who was in Breaking Bad. Josh Hartnett, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but he was in, Halloween H2O, The Faculty, Pearl Harbor, Lucky Number 11. You may also have recognized Kate Mara. I'm probably pronouncing that one wrong too. But she was in the remake of Fantastic Four, and she was also in The Martian with Matt Damon, and that's where I mainly recognize her from. And of course, they've been in a myriad of other things as well. And I did not realize this before looking it up, but Aaron Paul, who played Cliff in this episode, Beyond the Sea, and he was also did the voice of Gamer 691 in USS Callister, whenever they break out of the home computer and are in the cloud in that episode. I did not realize that he actually did a voiceover in that episode. I thought that was actually pretty cool. So now let's go ahead and get into the episode Beyond the Sea. And before we go any further, spoiler alert, we are going to be talking about the episode. So if you have not yet watched Beyond the Sea, go ahead and check that out first and then come on back and listen to the rest of the episode. Let's go ahead and get into it. Now, before looking this up, I did not realize that this actually takes place in 1969 in an alternate history, which, it makes sense because of the cars and whatnot that they were driving. It's pretty stinking awesome. I liked it. I thought it was pretty stinking awesome. I really did. Now, this episode kind of lets you in on what's going on kind of early in this one. So I knew that there was a twist coming. And this episode is definitely a little on the darker side, I guess. It's definitely twisted. I mean, holy cow. This episode is twisted. And you kind of, wow. It's a twisted episode. So what's going on? Okay, you have Cliff and David. And they're astronauts. They're in a space station, up in space. That's generally where space stations are located. And they're living their life. This is a two-man space station operation. But when they're not doing their weekly physicals, when they're not taking care of some sort of, problem that's going on the space station, they are actually living their life back home using a digital uplink and a replica that was made very much in their image. I mean, it's basically them. Now, I thought this was actually pretty stinking cool because for all intents and purposes, okay, we're more or less led to believe that these replicas are very, very realistic in how they feel. Okay, they feel like flesh, I guess. The warmth of it, the whole 9 yards. You very much get that distinct feeling that they are as real as you can make them. They move, they act, their mannerisms, how they their walk, their talk, their facial expressions, the whole 9 yards, it's them. For all intents and purposes, it's them. Now, We also kind of get that they're not anatomically correct, but outside of that, it's as real as the real thing. And what I find rather impressive on this one is the link itself. Because normally, especially back in 1969, you're talking, there was like a 14-minute delay, give or take, in communication back and forth with the astronauts and, Houston. You had a 7-minute, it took like 7 minutes for a communication to go from here to the moon and another 7 minutes back. Now, granted, they're not at the moon. It seems to, that they're outside the atmosphere, in the space station, that they're not anywhere, or at least we don't know where they're at. But the link itself, to me, was pretty stinking impressive, because you're talking the communication to and from basically zero latency, or as close to zero latency as you can get. That, to me, was pretty stinking impressive. I mean, granted, yes, that's how they did it, but I mean, think about it. If we could actually figure out that kind of thing on how to do that, the implications, wow. I mean, I guess you can use, quantum communications, which is phenomenal. If you've ever, gotten into quantum communications, that would be about the only way you could really do that. Quantum communication. I mean, but just, wow, that to me, I thought was pretty stinking awesome. The technology, period, on this one was amazing. It was just, wow, mind blowing, really. So let's get into this, because, you can't have rainbows and unicorns throughout the entire episode. Something bad ends up happening. And David, at some point during the night, he gets some visitors, like 5 or 6 people that ends up breaking into his house. And they are, it's a group of cult extremists that really don't like the idea of these replicas. The families that live with them and whatnot. And they end up killing David's wife, his 2 kids, and they even set fire to David's replica, making it to where he can no longer come back and get a break from the space station. That's one of the things that this whole thing provides with these replicas, because yes, they're 2 years into a 6-year mission. So they still have another 4 years that they're going to be, up in this space station. And this space station isn't big. It's actually relatively small for all intents and purposes. But one of the things that allows them to do this, long term, is this ability to, have this link to the replicas and basically live their life at home with their family. And now David loses everything in a single night, loses his wife, his kids, his replica, and is now stuck on this space station basically by himself. I mean, yeah, Cliff is there, but, Cliff's linked with his own replica, spending time with his wife and child. So basically, yeah, David's living by himself. I mean, it's just, as you can imagine, David goes into a downward spiral, and neither Cliff nor his wife, Lana have, know what to do. They don't know what to do. And David kind of becomes a little suicidal, and you can't blame him for what the man has been through. You really can't. And of course, Cliff is he's concerned, not just for, for David's sake, but also for his own sake, because, this is a two-man operation, this space station. And if something happens to David, that basically is going to mean the death of him as well. And so they come up with an idea. Lana and Cliff, they come up with an idea. Maybe, what if you allow David to use your link and your replica to kind of, to get out of the space station, to walk in the woods, to walk by the creek, experience life, breathe some air. What if you allowed him to do that? Would you think he would even be up for something like that? And that's got to be weird, right? I mean, on both parts of this. I mean, imagine being Lana, and your husband is not really your husband; it's somebody else on the inside. And imagine that from David's perspective too. I mean, here he is used to his own body, and now he's basically walking around and interacting with the world in somebody else's body. I mean, weird, right? I mean, on several levels, this is just taboo. What in the world's going on? But yeah, they asked David. David's like, yes, this would be awesome. And he spends some time. He breaks down, and there's the hint of healing going on for David. And some time passes, and they get done with their weekly fitness thing that they have to do every Friday. They got to do that. And David shows Cliff a drawing that he did. And it's an awesome stinking drawing. It looks pretty stinking cool. And Cliff's impressed. He's like, wow, you did this from memory. Just from a single look at, it was like, wow, this is really stinking good. And David, he has an idea. He's like, hey, I would, to say thank you, I would like to paint you something. Do a painting that you can hang in your house, and, to say thank you for allowing me to use your replica and, start that growing process, doing the art, the drawings, the paintings. It's something that really helps me out. It's really good for the healing process. This would be amazing. Yes, it would mean me using your link, which we can, negotiate on the best way to do this. And, they come up with a, once a week, every Friday for 1 hour and 1 hour only. There you go. You can use my replica. You can, do your painting, and, there you go. Continue with the healing process, help you out, allow you some time to get out of the space station. There you go. Now, obviously, this whole thing is weird for Cliff. It's weird for Lana. It's weird for their son. I can't remember what his name is. I'm not seeing it on the page. Yeah. I don't know. But after several sessions, David starts to get feelings for Lana. He makes an advance towards her. And Lana's not having it. She's like, no, you're not my husband. This is not right. David's like, you don't have to tell him. Doesn't matter. It's not going to happen. And it just kind of starts a downward spiral from there. At one of the times shortly thereafter, Cliff's back in the space station. He's waiting for David to come back. He goes into David's room and he sees a bunch of pictures that David has drawn of his wife. Suggestive. Basically draws her in the nude. And of course, Cliff's not happy. He's like, dude, I mean, what in the world? This is not good. This is not cool. This is my wife. What in the world? And he's just, hey, I apologize. I went too far. They fight. David gets punched. Cliff talks with Lana, finds out what happened. And then back on the space station, this ain't ever happening again. You using my replica happens no more. We're done. Shortly thereafter, when Cliff is in his replica, he gets a notification on his watch. Hey, there's a problem up on the space station. So he goes back. There's a problem with one of the coolant leak or something or another. He tries to come back into the space station after finding that there's nothing wrong. And in David's presence, he's like, a false diagnostic error. We got to make sure we get them to fix that. And then he realizes that his tag is gone. His tag is missing. So he asks David, where's my tag? Now, first, whenever Cliff comes back into the space station, where were you at? David goes, I was in the bathroom. Uh-huh. Now his tag's missing. David pulls it out of his pocket. Cliff's like, what did you do? Immediately goes back and goes into his replica. Whenever he's in his replica, blood on his hands, and you basically come to find out that David went in that short amount of time and killed at least Lana. I mean, we can only assume that he kills his son as well. We can only assume that. But definitely David killed his family. And the episode ends with Cliff coming back to the space station, back to his own body, walking into the dining room where David is already sitting down at the table, and then David kicks out a chair and is like, all right, now you can sit down and now we can talk. And I was just like, whoa. What a way to end the stinking episode, right? I mean, holy crap. I mean, granted, David accuses Cliff of, not appreciating his wife and his child, and, Lana deserves better and all this other kind of stuff. And it's just like, That's how wow. I mean, wow. Like I said, this was a twisted episode. All right, so let's get into some discussion points. All right. First and foremost, let's talk about the technology aspect of it, because this one is one that technology-wise, I thought this was intriguing, very much so. I mean, it takes virtual reality to a whole new level. You're talking, robotic uplinks. I mean, complete neurological and the whole 9 yards. With uplink, the full sensory, with all 5 senses, the whole 9 yards. I mean, that's just, to me, was pretty stinking cool, pretty stinking cool. So talking about that, how do you feel, or how would you feel with that type of uplink being possible? Okay. As far as the use case that they're using it with, an astronaut being able to still be home with his family and live their life with the family, and how would you feel about something like that? As far as the technology wise goes, just a creep factor, I guess you can say, how would you feel about that from all these different perspectives, from the perspective of the astronaut spouse or the child, friends, whatever, how would you feel about something like that? The good, the bad, what have you, is there any other scenarios where you think something like that would be beneficial? Obviously you got astronaut part right there, but what about somebody whom, is like a deep sea exploration, or, even, you're someplace else, like stationed out in Alaska or something, I don't know, something like that, though, where you're really far away, but you still want to be with your family, different case scenarios where something like that would be pretty stinking awesome, Now let's talk about the psychological aspect of this one. Because this is one where it's like, dude. I mean, granted, no pass for David and what happened to him, or at least what he did. No pass for what David did. I'm not even going to go that far, say that. Not at all. But what I will say, I mean, that's got to be hard, right? And I mean, at least on some level, I feel for the guy. Not that I can say that, I can understand where he's coming from, yes, but as far as what he did, no. Can't condone that whatsoever. But yeah, I mean, the pain that the guy was going through, the downward spiral, he, just, wow. What do you think they could have done different to help him out? I mean, what do you think they could have done different? I don't know. I'm kind of lost for that one myself. I don't know. Definitely a little dark, a little twisted episode. So let me know what y'all's thought as far as the technology base goes on this one, and just the overall psychology of this one. I mean, this one was just dark and twisted. Man, dark and twisted. Let me know. Head on over to blackmirrorpodcast.com. Send me a message that way, or of course you can send me an email, hoho@blackmirrorpodcast.com, and check that out. And of course, the what I say at the end of this one, and of course in the video itself, don't head over to thehohoshow.com for more information. Go to blackmirrorpodcast.com. That site is up and going. Check it out. Head on over there, blackmirrorpodcast.com. That is all I got for y'all today. Y'all have yourself a good one, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for listening to the Black Mirror Podcast. If you would like to join the conversation, you can comment on this episode at Spreaker.com or go to thehohoshow.com /forum in the discussion board for this season.